Hi, thanks for joining us today for our webinar, Build Better, Build Smart. In today's discussion, we discuss everything you need to know on making Gen AI work in manufacturing. Now, manufacturing companies can realize business value through Gen AI by optimizing the supply chain, getting closer to the end customer, and automating and accelerating the time to resolution for common interactions. For pursuing Gen AI transformation, manufacturers need to identify and prioritize use cases by evaluating business needs along with generative and traditional AI capabilities. They also need to adopt a data-first strategy by bringing together disjointed data sets, unstructured data, and also implement strong governance to lay a solid foundation for AI and Gen AI to work perfectly. Organizational readiness is another foundational element, as you need to access your organization's current status along with the costs and the benefits of what GenAI can bring to the table. Now, joining me today are three gentlemen who are experts in AI and use cases of Gen AI, especially in the manufacturing vertical. So with that, let me welcome Vivek Subramaniam. He's the principal architect manufacturing and automotive at Google Cloud India. Vivek, thanks so much for joining us. It's a pleasure hosting you.
Thank you so much, Samir.
All right. Up next, we've got Rajesh Shivani. He's the head of customer engineering at Google Cloud India. Rajesh, thanks for joining us, and I hope you're having a great day.
Hi, Shamik. Good to be here. I look forward to the conversation.
Sure. All right. And we know for a fact that you guys like use cases, you like case studies. So we have also got Rajesh Shivani, who's going to be joining us at a later point in time. He's the head of customer engineering. He's the head of infrastructure at for cloud data center and network at Mahindra & Mahindra. So we're going to be talking about use cases, actual implementation challenges, and some of the best practices of implementing Gen AI in manufacturing. So with that said, I'm going to leave it to you. Tell us about the role of Gen AI as you see it in the field of manufacturing. What are you most excited about, and how do you see this particular sector heading in the next 5 years or so? Over to you.
Sure. So maybe what we can do is start off with a presentation.
Okay.
And I'm happy to kind of do that, and post that. I know there's a panel discussion that you have with Rajesh and with Abhishek from the Mahindra team. So maybe we can get started. Let me just share the presentation with everybody. I trust you all can see it. So again, my name is Vivek Subramaniam. I'm an industry architect for the manufacturing sector, and very specifically being part of the automotive and manufacturing sector for the last few years, and super excited about this conversation. And of course, if you do have questions along the way about what we said or we didn't say, please do leave those comments so we can kind of address them. We do have time for question and answers. Right. So look, let's and what we'll walk through in the next 30 minutes of the presentation is the following, right? One, let's start with understanding the state of the union. I mean, we've been in this era of generative AI for the last few months. Where has it reached, and what have customers done successfully? So we'll spend some time there. Post that, let's speak a little more into the future in terms of where we think beyond the obvious use cases of creativity and basic document reading. Where can generative AI truly take us, and how do the constructs of agentic workflows support that? So we'll spend some time out there, and also I'll show you a demonstration of how we see agents within the manufacturing sector, and that should essentially help you understand. And once we do that, and I think that'll also be close to the end of my session, we'll get into a panel discussion with Rajesh and Abhishek from the Mahindra team. Right. So look, what has not changed? In the last few years, what has not changed is the consumer expectations. Again, no surprise there. Manufacturers, irrespective of the sector they are in, expect a B2C buying experience, and also supported by an omnichannel buying experience. What has not changed is the penetration of IoT and smart devices that send massive amounts of data about your interaction with their specific product. Also, as customers, right, you and I, and also consumers of manufacturing products, want personalized configuration, personalized service attention, so on and so forth, and all of that with value for money. And the only new dimension or layer that has become relevant is the construct of sustainability and how you essentially understand the carbon footprint your products and your services leave on the ecosystem around. All of these are, of course, complex problems, and one can view this through data and AI lens. And what we see is organizations using generative AI and AI at large to solve for some of these challenges that come around with the expectations of the consumer and the evolution of the ecosystem. And there are four broad themes that we see where generative AI and AI kind of fit, right, from a value chain standpoint. The first, people want to know if the technology can be used to reduce the time to market for releasing new products and also ensuring that you create products that take in customer feedback as that is available to you across a variety of channels. And therefore, what we're seeing in the space of generative AI is the use of the technology to go through reams of documents, and documents could be complex research papers, it could be comprehensive market studies, to be able to essentially understand the trends of technology and understand the needs of your consumers. And we see that a lot in the automotive space as well, where again, that's a good example to talk about, where people within the automotive industry are using this technology to understand what cars to kind of build out and how the car should look at in an intensifying sector. So that's one construct. The second construct is in terms of just efficiencies, right? Efficiencies for operations. Now, efficiencies are of two types. The first sort of efficiency is in terms of ensuring you understand how you can use generative AI's capabilities to understand documentation, understand data in structured tables, so on and so forth, to reduce the time it takes to do back office operations, right? Think a very popular example in the manufacturing sector is the use of generative AI to look at legal documentation and understand non-compliance, as an example, right? Or it could also be going through data that may be stored in a structured database to understand operational performance through the means of a natural language process, right? Second example. Let's move to the third one, and of course, a lot of initial set of the use cases, if you will, came in here. The first use case was how do you use the creative ability of generative AI? And creative could be the ability to create documents, text, images, so on and so forth, right? And hopefully in the future, videos and music as well, right? But how do you use some of these creative elements to be able to personalize and craft your message that resonates to each customer, therefore personalization at a segment of one level, right? A very popular use of generative AI and it's the underlying technology that powers search is the use to simplify discovery of products through enhancements through catalogs, right? Or it could be the use of smarter conversation agents that allow you to understand what products you are buying and how you kind of can serve the right product to your customer. So that's a good example of customer experiences. And I think I'll be amiss if I don't talk about call centers and how to drive better experiences and to essentially understand the dialogue the consumers having with your product and your services, to use, again, large sets of call center recordings to understand the nature of dialogues, right? As opposed to going through a sampling-based approach, which used to be the norm. And finally, in terms of sustainability, I think a lot of questions in terms of either creation of reports or pulling out information on the scope 1, 2, 3 emissions, which may be, again, locked in the balance sheets and P&L reports of various suppliers in your end-geared ecosystem, right? So those are the four broad themes that we saw generative AI being explored in the beginning. And there are more than enough case studies that are out there, both globally and in India, right? Some that really stand out, and especially on the customer experience side, is the fact that you're able to now, within your vehicle, have much smarter generative AI-related functionality that allow you to interact with the vehicle better, right? And a storied example of that is the work that we're doing with General Motors to kind of do this, right? On the manufacturing side, and I think a very powerful customer case study that we have is the work that we're doing with USD. Out there, we are using generative AI to help technicians understand where issues are and how to essentially solve issues by identifying issue to diagnosis to the actual solve by going through reams of manufacturing manuals, right? Thereby impacting the amount of time it takes to close a work order from a repair standpoint. Okay? Now, again, more and enough examples in this space, and a lot of work that we're doing in India with Indian customers in this space. And some of this you should hear in the conversation with Abhishek from Mahindra and Rajesh from the Google side. But let's look a little beyond, because I think some of those use cases, given the immense hype around generative AI, there is a lot of awareness. So let's talk about how do you go beyond the obvious and how do you create transformational impact or step function impact. Look, if you look at the state of the union of generative AI, is the initial set of models that came out were fairly, in terms of modality, with a single mode, right? Single modality models. They could either do creation of text well, they could either create images well, or consume information in either of these formats well enough. And they tend to be very small and like focused in terms of what it could do, right? Hey, read a document, read a manufacturing manual document, right? Or read essentially certain KPIs from a database, right? So very, very unidimensional and very focused in its approach. What has changed is the following. One, while people were able to get value out of these use cases, the next set of capabilities is around multimodality. What that means is we're talking about models that can process information like humans do, which is the ability to see, the ability to hear, and the ability to read information across text, images, videos, and be able to consume that and distill information, right? All through a single model. And in our case, that's the Gemini flagship model in the entire family. The second thing that's changed is the construct of, the lower of TCOs, which is essentially the ability to, and a lot of you have seen the announcement with respect to this, but the TCO has been reducing exponentially at a per model token size level. In addition to that, certain features that Google has launched, which is in terms of the large token size, Gemini supports over 1 million tokens. It has unique features such as context caching. All of that means that you can still do your MVPs pilots using Gemini's prompt tuning features, and you're able to scale it and make your TCO a lot more attractive, and your ROI is a lot more attractive from a generative scale. But talking about a point that I spoke very specifically in terms of single task, single goals, we are now moving to the age of agentic workflows. And I'll spend some more time in terms of what agentic workflows is. But we believe in the operations space, manufacturing, supply chain, within the four walls of the factory, outside the four walls of the factory, these agentic workflows can really define or drive productivity for organizations, and will be an extension of the Industry 4.0 journey there. What is an agent, you ask? Well, an agent, very simply think of it as an entity that can problem solve complex problems and manage complex workflows to achieve a certain goal. A goal out here could be improvement of OE, it could be improvement of OTD, so on and so forth. You get the picture. And a simpler way of looking at agents is maybe, what if you could use generative AI's capabilities and all the reasoning that it has to be able to replicate the performance of your best performing analyst or your best performing employee, right? How do you take all that heuristic knowledge that you have to be able to create, and embed it into generative AI? And that's why we see generative AI models go. Now, I know I've spoken quite a bit, so maybe as opposed to talking, I could move towards showing you how this could play out. And I'm going to do that through the example of a demonstration. Now, this demonstration is, think of a scenario where you're an operations manager and you essentially have a set of plants, P1, P2. You have various sorts of machines under this particular plant. So a plant here has 8 machines, P2 has 3 machines. And of course, there are a set of KPIs that indicate performance, right? What people really, really care about in the operations space is just 3 things. Like, they want to know what's going wrong with their operations. They want to know why things are going wrong. And of course, they want to know, how do I fix the issue when things go? And we believe that generative AI has a role to play out here. And let me show you this through me as an example. What I've done is I've kind of moved towards a demonstration environment. This is going to be a live demo, so Here's bring to the demo boards it works. So let me start with the what question, right? Now, if I know what's going wrong with plant P1, P2, I might start with a question like this, right? Tell me what's going wrong with plant P1, P2. Now think about how a human would answer this. If a human had to answer this question, the person would have to say, look, I need to understand performance, so which is going to be derived by a set of KPIs. I then need to understand what are the KPIs for each of the plants, P1 and P2. Once I understand the performance, I need to compare it with some value, right? It could be a baseline, threshold, what have you. And once that is done, I essentially need to understand where the values are below the baseline. And if the values are below the baseline, then of course there is some anomaly and I need to report this. Yep. Now the very thought process that I kind of walked you through is the exact, and you probably are noticing my screen, is the exact way the tool is run, right? It essentially, we have prompt trained Gemini in this case to think through this, right? So we have said that, hey, look, you need to pull out the KPIs, right? Sorry, just give me a second. You need to pull out the KPIs from the various, you need to pull out the KPIs associated with P1 and P2. Post that, you need to pull out the baseline. And from that standpoint, you need to then provide a response. Now, the analysis is something like this that Gemini has created, right? It says that, look, basically using the prompt train instructions and pulling out information, it's pulled out the values of the KPIs, and the values of the KPIs are from the enterprise data warehouse, which is BigQuery in our case. So you know that is grounded in factuality. Post that, it's essentially pulled out the threshold values. Again, that these values are coming in from the enterprise data warehouse, which is BigQuery. It has done a comparison and it has identified what is performing well and what is not performing. In this case, OEE and FPY seem to be underperforming, while the other KPIs seem to be doing pretty okay, right? Similarly, it's done the same analysis for plant P2, and post which it essentially provides certain sort of visualizations and commentary on top of it, right? Now, this is an example of how things are, shaping up in terms of what is going on. But what people really, really care about, and I'm just going to go to the second question, what people really care about is why and how to improve things when things are going wrong, right? So let me ask a question. All right, so I'm asking the question. Now, this is a far more nuanced question because, again, for those of you who come from the manufacturing background, obviously understand that OE is a function of your, it's a function of the various machines in the shop floor, right, under that particular. So that's one part of it. The second thing is, once it identifies the machines, it needs to identify the poorest performing machines. Right? Let me just go up where you'll see the logic split up. Yeah, so this is the thought process. Then second, it needs to know what are the various machines that are under the particular plant. And from there, it needs to understand the poorest performing machines. Once it does that, it needs to essentially look at root causes associated with the poorest performing machines. All of that information is still information that can be in an enterprise data warehouse. And as you can see, the steps that I have mentioned are steps that it's pulling out from BigQuery, which is an enterprise data warehouse. The how part is the trickier part because the how is usually information that's locked up in SOPs or manuals that are there, and that's this knowledge that is there in the shop. So the how to fix, once it understands the root cause, is being picked up from something called Vertex Enterprise Search. Now, Vertex Enterprise Search is a managed service offering for essentially the ability to Q&A documents and pull out information from it, right? So you do not have to go through the problem of creating your own logic for it, having your own RGB structure, so on and so forth. So that is absorbed. And once all of these steps are kind of executed, the analysis is what you see on the table. So it says the plant P1 OE and machine instances. It essentially says that, look, I have so many machines under plant P1. The problem machines that have above OE are the following, and these are the machines which have lowish, which is CNCG 9, 10, 11. From that point, it's gone to the root cause table again within the enterprise data warehouse, pulled out the root causes, pulled out the various instances associated with the root cause. Yeah. And once it is identified the root cause, it is essentially going to the how to improve, and it's providing certain prescriptive steps, which it is essentially taking from the manufacturing manual and another manual called a summary combination. Alongside that, it is obviously provided certain commentary and certain visualizations. Now, if you think of what you saw was the ability of generative AI to go from an issue, right, to an action in the shortest possible time, right? And as opposed to an individual human having going through, multiple databases or multiple sources of information across structured data and unstructured data, the reasoning of how the person would solve for this has been kind of baked into the generative data, right? Now, while I obviously walked you through a specific example, the same example could apply for other KPIs. But let's talk a little more in terms of what's behind the scenes, right? And by no means it is something that you just plug and play, and the reason for that is your context, right? No solution is going to be a silver solution where you can get away from it. You just plug it in your environment and you'll understand the best practices from a process standpoint, you'll understand the golden truth from your data standpoint. And now to essentially, if you had to take this journey, this would be the following data, right? It would start with creating your master agent, and think of this as the brains of the entire operation. This is where you essentially, based on your best practices, tell the generative AI agent how to think about the problem and how to solve the problem. OEE today, if you write tomorrow, OTD in the roadmap, right? And once you do that, you also create sub-agents that are very, very good in individual tasks. One sub-agent could be pulling out KPIs from the right sources. The second could be some sort of and again, in this case, it would be Vertex Enterprise Search, which essentially has a responsibility of managing documents and putting out information from all of this, right? The third is how the response has to be structured. Now, what you saw in my response, there were certain commentary and there was a set of graphs that can obviously be defined and changed as to how you want to see it, right? And underlying this is your sources of truth, which is your data sources, and that ensures that your responses are grounded in factuality. Of course, and as an aside, at Google, we are very conscious about making your data and making your AI work for you. And we have created a set of accelerators across manufacturing assets. So, I mean, basically a solution that connects to over 250 plus OT protocols, right? The ability to pull information from your SAP data. And that's a framework that we created called the Cortex framework. Think of it as a pre-packaged, pre-populated accelerator that allows you to pull data from the base tables in SAP, bring it in a normalized manner in the data warehouse, so you can start worrying about insights and not necessarily plumbing, right? Similarly, like we mentioned, the Vertex AI component, which has a whole suite of accelerators to evaluate models, the ability to essentially manage models once they're deployed, so on and so forth. If again you were to kind of take a step back in terms of the platform that is at play, what you'll see is a lot of the AI capabilities that we built on top of the Vertex AI platform. Think of your Vertex AI platform as your go-to AI platform that has a leading set of models, both Google first-party GenAI and AI models, and leading third-party generative AI and AI models. So in terms of the models, we've got you covered. In terms of managed services, either to create the ability to search documents, the Google type of search on your internal documents, or the ability to chat and create agentic flows through the Vertex AI agent builder. And below all of that is all the goodness in terms of the tools and techniques that allow you to assess models, serve models, train models, deploy models, so on and so forth, right? And at the very end, of course, in the compute standpoint, it would be amiss not to talk about just the price performance gains that one gets when they look at the various families of the computing infrastructure. So to kind of get to the stage what you wanted to get to from an AI standpoint and go towards the future of agents that can do step function disruptions for your manufacturing context, we believe that data and AI is kind of the is the base. And if you want to do that journey, the first thing you might want to do is obviously set out your vision and end state outcome for what agents look in your constant. Once you do that, and once you have a view, start small by identifying the process and data where you have the highest maturity. So one, if you want to do analysis based on data, the data should be available. And two, if you want to kind of solve and draw insights from it, you should have a fairly mature, cross-functional organization that will set your process. Of course, given that it's all about cross-functional teams and you cannot do this as an IT team alone, identify your cross-functional teams. And look, a lot of what you saw there, again, at Google, we've helped organizations build similar constructs and similar solutions. So if that is of interest to you, reach out to your Google account team. We'd love to kind of work with you and see this come live in your specific team. With that, I'm good for my session. What I'll do is I'll hand it back to Shamik. And Shamik, maybe if you could just hand it to the panelists, Rajesh and Abhishek, we're good to go.
All right. Thanks so much for that, Vivek. That was a fantastic session. I'd also like to welcome our third panelist here today. He's just joined us. That's Abhishek Sukhpal, the head of infrastructure, cloud, data center, and network at Mahindra & Mahindra. Abhishek, thanks so much for joining us. Welcome to today's webinar.
Yeah, thank you. Hi.
Hey, Abhishek, good to see you again.
Hi, Rajesh. How are you?
Good, good. How have you been?
See you.
All right. Well, Abhishek, Vivek walked us through a brilliant presentation. He told us a lot about how manufacturing companies are using GenAI. He spoke about scopes of GenAI in legal documentation, operational performance using NLP, personalization, simplification of products, and of course, something that we've been hearing across all verticals and not just manufacturing is the development of multimodal capabilities, where companies can now, assess data from text, from video, from audio, etc., and that helps you interact with your customers in a better manner. But to start with, Abhishek, I'd like to throw this question to you, and we'll start with something easy. First up, if you could tell us, what are some of the use cases for GenAI in manufacturing that you're most excited about?
At Mahindra, we started GenAI journey last year, and we are at a very matured stage right now. Earlier, when we started with Palm, Gemini, textual and audio and video for engineering. Now, to their multimodal capabilities have also come, and we have in production now stabilized. It has brought efficiencies in manufacturing, mostly on the knowledge-based, RAG, search-based GenAI, where in the multilingual also it can tell people how to use their SOPs and even helping in the tech, basically on the service side also with our dealers.
Okay.
There's some issues comes and then they used to call the tech specialists. Now they go to GenAI bot, and GenAI bot guides them how to deal it with photographs and with all the SOPs and try to solve the problems. And we continue to add the knowledge base and other things. On multimodal, we are working on other videos and other things which we make and trying to make SOPs and indexing that the person can read from there itself while he want to handle any maintenance thing. So maintenance video, and from maintenance video, he want to understand a particular thing, how to open something or something. It is helping. They can go and so that indexing and everything is happening through GenAI. We are putting anyway engineering around it and search, RAG, other things which we are using for parsing, RAG for search and this. But GenAI is helping tremendously, and I think what we see from 2-3 years back, where we used to have bot signal NLP, there was a lot of work need to be done to train it, and that's why they were not very successful also, because the huge implementation was not very easy. So you had a very narrow use case where you could implement. Now here it's very easy. You upload your documents, and we had made our own platform, Mahindra AI, where parsing is done, and then parsing, and it goes into our vector databases, and then it is usable. So At present, I think more than 40 use cases we are using in production. It is very interesting about HR and customer service, uh, audios of customer call centers to be analyzed, a lot of things. So it is helping. There are certain tasks like analyzing audio, which is humongous task. We were not doing also, but now GenAI made it possible. Otherwise, it won't. So it is helping us to bring efficiency. And we have customer bots also launched. So customers also getting information in hand 24 hours, not calling our call center, getting information on the bot. And that's good.
All right, understood. All right, Abhishek, I think you covered a lot of ground there, and it's pretty impressive the kind of steps Mahindra has taken towards Gen AI. And at this point, I would urge the audience to please share your questions with us. You've got one of the IT leaders who's been spearheading one of your transformational technologies, one of the earlier adopters of Gen AI in manufacturing. So please share your questions. We've also got Google Cloud, who's been working with a lot of customers in India and across the world. And we'd be more than happy to take and address your questions. Now, from what we've heard from from Abhishek, Rajesh, I would want to draw you into the conversation now. You've also engaged with a lot of customers. If you could share some of the examples of where are you seeing the enterprises realize the value of Gen AI? I mean, one of the things he's pointed out is the elimination of ticketing. I know for a fact that CIOs hate, the ticketing process, and if it can be outsourced to Gen AI, nothing like it. What have you been hearing?
No, I think the great conversation, Shamik, with Abhishek. I think he shared some really good examples, 40 plus use cases. I didn't know myself, so I think that's really great to see the progress, Abhishek. And Vivek also, spoke a lot about all the use cases that we've got. If you think about Gen AI and AI in general, right? Gen AI is something which has been around. AI has been around for a much longer time. Gen AI, the hype has just been built up for the last couple of years. But AI has been around for over 50 plus years, right? We've been doing machine learning and then deep learning, even 20 years ago with the whole neural networks and predictive analytics that we were doing for so many years, right? And there's been a bit of shift too. So our thinking also, or the organizations, the way they think also has evolved over a period of time, right? So we still do. Not every problem, I believe, is a Gen AI problem. We can still do a lot of statistical modeling, predictive analytics, and there are things like forecasting, for example, right? They work very well with the traditional ML models too. So we got to think about the balance about what works for best type of use case that we're trying to solve for. So rather than you training it on data, which is a model, and then the model then produces an outcome or a product which tells you forecasting whether something is likely to happen or not, or in what ratio. Gen AI is trying to look at, it'll start with the product and the model generates the data, right? The whole is generating data, is generating output. And then that becomes the core capability as well. And over a period of time, it learns from its past and evolves even more. So Gen AI, I think, is all about what are we generating. So if you think about it from that sense, is it helping me generate things that did not exist in the past and not necessarily just predicting based on past statistical data? Then you start to think about the use cases that will most likely benefit from that. So, the use case that Abhishek spoke about, which is generating the SOP videos. So you start to think about AI and Gen AI as a much more horizontal function, not necessarily specific to manufacturing. I'll talk about manufacturing also, but it could apply to almost a variety of industries, right? As a collaborator, can it help? Can it be like the super-powered assistant that I have with me that collaborates with me either on the front line, in the back office, on the shop floor, and able to make our lives much more easier, right? So can it help collaborate to create something that does not exist, to create images, videos, standard operating procedure videos, training videos, think about all the work that would have gone in the past to create a video for training in a new factory or a new joinee that comes in. AI is helping to create that in a much more systematic way, right? Right now, it's joining a lot of images, but soon with VO and models in open source, we'll create full-fledged videos as well, right? Can it help me summarize information, be it an email, be it a document, be it contracts, be it scope of work, all of that? It's still a collaborator, right? It applies to almost any industry. Can it help me discover? Can I use it as a search engine, right? Like Google as a search engine, a GenAI-powered search engine, both for internal and external. So these are all very, very horizontal, which I think have been the early adopters, because they're very they're not too difficult to put together and implement, right? But does it generate enough value is the question that organizations will keep asking. Then you get to a very domain-centric view to say, will it help me solve a problem which is very, very specific to an automotive or very, very specific to an engineering company, like Mahindra, automotive, R&D, those kind of problems, right? And then we start to think, what Vivek was talking about, the plant operations advisor, things like there is something being discussed as equipment AI, which is for any equipment, no matter what equipment, whether it's in the factory, whether it's on the field, can it help me do service automation around that? So I have a virtual agent that will flag off anomalies and give you suggestions on how to fix anomalies, right? Or it'll be the plant operations advisor that was just being spoken about, somebody who I can relate to from the OEE metric or any other metric to make my operations more. Think about maintenance, and Abhishek also covered that. We've been trying to tackle predictive maintenance forever, right? It's an age-old problem now, but GenAI is trying to reimagine the whole concept of predictive maintenance as well. That's a pretty interesting use case that's emerged. Very quickly, I'll close on this before we move to the next area. A lot of them are also on the customer or a dealer and a distributor facing side as well, where you have a human at the other end who's trying to interact with the system at the back, right? So for automotive, for example, and I know Mahindra has been thinking about doing this as well, basically digitizing the entire car manual and ask questions of the manual rather than flipping pages, right? So if I see a red light on the dashboard and I don't know what that light is all about, I can just ask the system to say, hey, I'm seeing a red light on the dashboard. What could that potential problem be? And it'll help me either to fix it then and there or help me book a service appointment the next day or sometime when I'm available, right? All of that. Mercedes, for example, is a good case study we have. You can look up, just YouTube it. You'll find Mercedes who's done similar work with us at a global level in this space, right? Lots of work happening here. Think about the whole conversational commerce, trying to understand if I want to do a test drive, if I want to even, these are all consumer or dealer and distributor facing use cases. Then there are some internal use cases also, and Abhishek spoke about that, the whole knowledge Q&A, right? You have an internal repository, and I want to understand policies of the company, legal and compliance processes, all of that is happening. And last but not the least is the whole marketing area, right? Marketing campaigns, and GenAI has been a big boost there. And I know companies who are starting to think about, how can they work with agencies in a much more effective manner on the marketing side, because you have these tools now that power them. And lastly, I know marketing was last, but there's one thing I missed out is the whole back office transformation, accounts payable, procurement, invoice processing, the whole, if you think about OCR as a concept, which is very old now, but apply GenAI to OCR and not have to worry about formats, the whole RPA integration, the compliances that you have to do at the back office. So I've spoken a lot, but think about horizontal as a collaborator, and then very, very specific to an industry. Many of them are live, as Abhishek also pointed out, but many of them are experimental as well. So lots happening in this space.
Understood. Thanks for that, Rajesh. And again, a lot of ground covered there. A lot of holistic, points and a lot of use cases that we're yet to see. Now, Abhishek, again, talking about the other companies that, yes, when a new technology came through, we were waiting for it to actually figure out, whether it's just another shiny object or whether it's real. But we now know that, GenAI is real. It's here to stay. There are use cases. There's real business value coming from it. There's still a little bit of skepticism as to, how successful is the implementation going to be? Because we have seen that with a lot of AI projects as well. A lot of them are probably, not going to make it off the shelf, or a lot of them don't make it past the pilot stage. As an early adopter, Abhishek, what would be your recommendation, or what would be some of the best practices you would share with your, IT leaders in manufacturing? What are the absolute must-dos for IT leaders to ensure that they have successful implementation of a GenAI project?
So I will share our experience. Earlier, the AIs which we were using on predictive, or I will say on CNN, convolutional neural network, image processing, they were very narrow AIs where you have to train your models. And that's why the scalability was also a challenge. While GenAI comes with its own training, the best part of GenAI is like what Rajesh was telling is, if you want to ask a question on a accounts payable or something, it brings external expertise on your data on accounts payable. So these models are trained in such a way that they have a holistically everything reinforcement learning has been done. Now, for Gen AI kind of thing, I will suggest companies to first create a platform. What we created actually, we created a
Okay.
platform, Mahindra AI, and the platform was built on Google Kubernetes, right? And there we had done the engineering of upload the document and parsing those documents and creating your vector database and RAG model implemented. Then we created collaboration workspaces, and then we started giving it to people that you upload your document and start your work. Then slowly and slowly, we fine tune with specific use cases. And I think the what rightly said by Rajesh is it is horizontally collaborative tool. So you just need to prompt it properly, do the backend parsing engineering properly. You can implement on most of the use cases where you want a human interaction, where you want intelligence to find out something, you want to summarize something. Yes, there is a limitation like predictive and other things, or image processing and other things, because of the token limitation as of now. But going forward, I think Gen AI will become a universal AI. The way it is emerging with multi-model things, I think going forward it will become a very specific horizontal this. So my suggestion to companies is to create first a platform, because Gen AI is a holistic AI, and so you can try it out various use cases, whether it is text, whether it is videos, whether it is, you may be requiring some engineering algorithm in between for your prompt and for setting your temperatures or setting your assistant and those things, which will be required there.
Mhm.
But once you create those options for users to play around with this, they can create their own use cases. But what we have found that when we launched this Mahindra AI, many people brought their own use cases. Like
Right.
HR brought a use case where HR goes in our IMs and other, there they gives use cases and then they evaluate based on 6 parameters. Now, when
Mhm.
they did it on Gen AI, the which was done manually, that was missed out, but Gen AI has given the correct, and they were surprised. But okay, we just why we could not select this? Some somewhere with the manual person neglected that guy, but that with AI it came into the top 10. So the
Right.
people are using and they are coming up with a legal team is coming with their MSA agreement that in our agreement these 6 policies should be there. So they upload and they find out all these 6 are there or not. So it will tell you yeah, these 6 are there, and we also made a citation there. So with citation it comes. It is there
Mhm.
available on the 6th page, paragraph number something something. So this is how I think Gen AI, since it's a holistic, if we are going with 1 or 2 use case or 3 use case as a company, it will slowly evolve, because it will take. But most of the use cases can be deployed horizontally without any tweaking. Most of them will require RAG or some engineering algorithm in between prompt and other things. So that is there. And second thing is, um, think about the use case, because Gen AI is not a placebo that it will solve all problems. Uh,
Right.
you will require predictive analytics, will you require NN models, where you will require CNN models, it will remain to be there. It won't change.
Understood. All right. So Rajesh, golden words from Abhishek right there. Gen AI will become universal AI, and I do believe, I also firmly believe that it's going to act as a great leveler. It's going to level the playing field for both bigger and the smaller players out there. So now, if you could tell us, what does Google bring to the table? How are you going to help your customers be successful and move from the experimentation to large scale implementation?
Absolutely. I think Abhishek covered it very well. I like what, I mean, he essentially is saying what we propagate is take a platform-based view and don't take it only as a single item or a single use case-based view. When you start to think in terms of platforms, right? That means you can now reuse a lot more rather than starting from scratch for everything. And I'll cover that. So I think broadly, when you think about moving from experiment to production, there are various elements that you need to be mindful of, right? And I think there are three broad areas I would suggest. One is the whole think about, and Abhishek cover this again, is the accuracy of correctness of the outcome, right? While we see, there's this, a lot of, we hear about hallucinations, we hear about not getting consistent response to the same question. I might get a different. That's the whole concept of GenAI. It's not deterministic in that sense, right? It could give you a different answer, which is okay.
Right.
That's the way it is designed. But how do I ensure that if I'm going to take a decision, or if this is going to be the mechanism through which users are going to interact with, whether internal or external, and there are back office processes, shop floor processes that are going to rely on, then I need to make sure they're accurate and they're correct, right? So correctness and accuracy of the outcome when you go into production is extremely key. Abhishek rightly pointed out RAG, which is retrieval augmented generation that we focus on, and the whole vector databases that allow you to create embeddings. So keep architecting for that becomes extremely critical, right? Grounding, there's a term called grounding that we use. Basically telling you where does this data actually come from, which I can trace back to whatever response I get. So the first point is about how do you ensure accuracy and correctness of the outcome. So Google's been working with organizations to ensure that we bring all the different pieces together to make that happen. The second key one, I think, in my mind, is security. As these systems proliferate and become part of our day-to-day lives, even in the factory, your surface area of attack is increasing multifold, right? Which means you're giving an opportunity to bad actors to take action if they want, which can be negative for you. So it's a double-edged sword, right? We're using GenAI for our good, but there are people who can use it for all the wrong reasons as well. And the more and more you start exposing this to the outside world, the more and more potential that is from a security point of view. So we take security with our customers extremely seriously. And think about security as you would apply to any application, whether it's an ERP or a CRM or a workflow. You would take security into account, right? Who has access, who doesn't have access, what can it do, what it cannot do. So security, is GenAI. Security for GenAI is extremely critical. Google has a whole lot of offerings. We have partners who bring in capability here. Privacy and safety. Is my data going to be used by the models? That's a key area we want to make absolutely clear. It's absolutely not. It's going to be specific to what you are trying to do, right? The IP that these systems create, right? What it's plagiarism? What if this image already exists? What if this video already exists, right? How do I know that I'm not copying anyone? So privacy and safety becomes extremely critical. There is things called prompt hacking or prompt poisoning, which somebody tries to, get into your prompt and make it do things that you don't want it to do. There was a very famous case study in the US where you had a bot which was powered by GenAI, and thankfully it was not on Google, where essentially it convinced the user that the user convinced the bot to say that you will listen to me no matter what, right? And they convinced that person to sell a very expensive car for $1. And they had to legally comply to it, right? Because that it now becomes a representative. So how do you ensure that nobody is able to do things like prompt hacking, prompt poisoning? Extremely important. And lastly, on the security front is the core infrastructure, right? All of these systems run on infrastructure. How do you secure your infrastructure at the back as well? So what are the guardrails that you bring in? So I think second key thing is security. So first one was accuracy and correctness of the outcome. Second one is security. How do we take care of that when we move into production? And third is, it was again touched upon by Abhishek, is scale. Right? You're not doing it for a small one or two things, right? You want it to scale. That's the platform-based approach that I was talking about, right? Integrating with external systems, making part of your workflows. How do you make it scale and ensure that it's used in a relevant manner? So I would say these three broad, there are lots more, but I think in the interest of time, we can stick with these three. If you're able to cover accuracy, security, and managing scale, without blowing up the costs, I must say, right? Because GenAI systems, if you're not careful, it can be expensive too. So these are some of the things I'd say you need to keep into mind for production use cases.
Absolutely. All right. We're now at that stage of the conversation where we are going to drill a little bit deeper and get into the actual nuts and bolts of how to make GenAI work. So Abhishek, I'm going to rope you into this discussion, and you'd be perfect to answer this question because you're heading infrastructure. So if you could tell us what we've been talking about GenAI in general. So we need to have a strong data platform as one of the foundation to success of GenAI. How do you see the data platforms and its impact on GenAI. And this is also brought forth by one of the viewers who's joined us today, by Neha Mishra, who's asking us what are the foundational steps needed before being GenAI ready. So if you could tell us from a infra point of view, what is the foundation that we need to have in place?
So for any AI, forget about GenAI, data is the main engine to run any AI. So
Right.
anything which you require, and data is required to train your models, and data is required to use them for GenAI also, data is required. And we require some, what as rightly said by Rajesh, as scalable data, whatever data systems we should have should be scalable, secure, and we can have the data platforms in such a way that it can hold a lot of data, scale up, flexibility of using them. And while we use most of the cloud databases now, managed services, they are very good in terms of managing our data. Earlier, we used to have on-prem business warehousing and all those things. They were very difficult to manage. And since digitalization is happening, a lot of data is coming from various interactions with our customers, machines, devices. Everything is coming to a particular data platform and bringing them to data platform, and then we can use them for our AI generation. Is the data platform should be resilient, scalable, and if managed, then we can work on top of it while not taking any efforts to manage the database itself. So data platforms should be for us, or as a customer, because our expertise is on the business use cases to get our customer more value, to give our customer more value, more, I will say, good products, good offerings. We should work on using that data to create AI or other models, finding out. Data platforms should be resilient, scalable, and secure.
Right. Understood. Now, Abhishek, if you could share in, I'm sorry, Rajesh, if you could share in your thoughts on this as well. Abhishek just pointed out, the kind of linkage that you need to have between data and AI. How is Google ensuring that, there's no friction, or both of these are able to interplay perfectly?
Yeah. No, I think it's a very important point that Abhishek also raised, right? Because if you think about in the AI world now, what is going to be the organization's moat, right? What is going to be their differentiator or competitive advantage? Because if you think all the models are going to be made available to everyone, Mahindra will have access to it, so will their competitors, so will everybody who's willing to pay for it or subscribe to the APIs and so on, open source or non-open source, right? So model is not necessarily going to be a differentiator alone, right? But if you start combining, and nor is going to be the underlying infrastructure like a GPU or a TPU, which is tensor processing unit. It's an advantage for allowing you to do inferencing faster, train the model faster for sure. But if you look at, it's still available to everyone. Anybody who, GPU, TPUs, even the models, and if you put that layers, the third layer is the data, right? Which is not going to be available to everyone, which is not publicly available, because that's your IP. That's the data warehouses, data lakes that companies have built over decades now. Mahindra has built a data lake and a data warehouse for years now, and which is very, very specific to your business. It's specific to Mahindra's business. So when you start to combine the models which are trained on the corpus of public internet data, and you marry it with your data, that's when you start to see a differentiator, right? So I think it's extremely important that companies don't leave that piece out. Don't rely only on the model and the infra behind it, but combine it with your data set. That'll get the accuracy that we spoke about earlier. That'll get the ability to create a differentiated, whether it's an offering, whether it's a promotion, whether it's customer experience, it will be differentiated compared to what somebody else is doing, because they won't have Mahindra's data, right? They will not have, similarly, Mahindra will not have somebody else's data. So ensuring that it's integrated. And now with the whole AI world, it's not as difficult as it used to be, right? Getting access to that data. You can write natural language queries that convert into SQL, and I don't even need to write complex SQL anymore. I mean, yes, you do at times, but a lot of the pre-work has already been done. we haven't spoken about one key element of AI, which is the ability to write code, right? The whole
Right.
something called code assist. And if you combine data with the ability to write code, I think that becomes extremely critical. And we're ensuring that organizations don't miss out on that critical piece of working with their own data sets.
Absolutely. And Rajesh, that was a great point that a lot of CIOs have been highlighting GenAI's ability to write code and the impact it has on the SDLC.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. You're looking for agile transformation. I think that's a very important point that you raised up there.
Absolutely.
All right. I think we have time enough for a quick rapid fire round. So it's pretty simple. I'm just going to throw out one question to you guys. What are you most excited about at this point in time about GenAI? And what are you most cautious about? So we'll go with Abhishek first. Abhishek, what are you most excited about? I know you're an early adopter, so you're looking at the next horizon. What does GenAI look like for you?
The exciting part of GenAI is now the multi-models have come, which will
Okay.
reduce a lot of engineering efforts, which is required to bring AI to a certain level. So it will be a more plug and play, and most of the generic knowledge which is coming in GenAI, which will help a lot, like for example in cars, or even, I don't know, going forward, ADAS capturing and all those things can happen. It can assess the car with a view from the camera, and a lot of things can come. It is very exciting field, which I think the way the generative AI and multi-models are evolving, and they are getting trained. The cautious part is the security is one of the main concerns, like prompt posting and those things which Rajesh says. How do you, because every day, there are few people every day trying to break somehow, like you go on, so many models are there and they use prompt poisoning, and those are available on internet. They have used Dan or other algorithms too. And it is difficult for service providers or GenAI providers also to keep that pace. Those things are something where we are cautious about, because when we are giving this GenAI interface to our customers, then it becomes very difficult for us if it can be manipulated by the customer or somebody else, and then tomorrow it will go into the news. Okay, that's what Rajesh Wale was saying. That was the point of caution, and second is on the cost. So not everything is Gen AI, and what I've seen since it has become a talk of the town in every boardroom, it is a talk of the town. Every product company is taking, why don't we are also bringing Gen AI in our product? So in the products also Gen AI is coming, and with this thing, I think the cost also becomes very critical part, because the cost will rise. So we have to be very cautious about what is the use case and how do we optimize it for our use.
Yeah.
Okay. Rajesh, let's hear your point of view, please.
Sure. There are quite a few things I'm excited about for the future, both specific to manufacturing and otherwise as well. Vivek touched upon one of those, was the whole notion of AI agents. I think it's just the beginning of what we are hearing about agents and the agentic workflows. Think about agents is not just some program that will just answer your question or do, but it will also give you a reason, and it will take an action on your behalf if you want it to, right? So it's a complete, it's very interesting what agents can potentially do, and they will not work alone, right? Think about, humans, we always all of us are interacting right now, exchanging thoughts and ideas. Agents will interact with each other. So they will do a specific task. There's another agent that do another task, and they will, coexist and work together. And you're just at the beginning of that, and how applications and workflows will leverage that and that's every industry, right? I'm also excited about voice as a multimodal thing aspect. Of course, image and video. And Google, in fact, announced Gemini Live, right, a few days ago. Think about talking to the system and it responds back like you're talking again to a person and not just necessarily through a chat, right? So voice is an input, and getting the input back that you think, you start talking to systems. It might sound weird at times, but So voice is, I think, is going to be interesting too. Specifically to manufacturing, I think the whole concept of converting or converging of LLMs into physical robots, we hear and see a lot about that, right? There are various startups that have come up in this space, and where robots now, like you have robotic arms in Mahindra factories today, you will have robot workers as well. That day is not too far. I know we need to start thinking about what is the broader implication of that, but that's something that is in the future that's not too far away, right? So that's something that very interesting area that's coming here. We spoke about large context window, right? What that means is giving an entire, maybe a 3-4 hour video as an input. What does that mean, right? Think about a security footage that you want to give, and then ask questions of where that event occurred in a special security footage. So large context window. And lastly, in the manufacturing world, AI could potentially help us discover new materials or invent new materials, right? That can go into, let's say, an EV battery, or it could go into a manufacturing process. There's a lot of research work happening in leveraging AI to discover and actually invent new materials itself, reduce cost, improve quality without compromising on the end product. So lots of interesting things happening in this space. It's evolving literally every day, this area.
Absolutely, Rajesh. Yeah, we've been hearing about lithium replacements and AI being put into use for that. Now, before we wind up, Abhishek, a quick question for you again. We've been hearing a lot about these supply chain disruptions. And Rajesh, since you've worked with a lot of manufacturers, you can chip in as well. We've been hearing about supply chain disruptions. That's one of the core discussion topics in manufacturing, in the manufacturing sector. Do you think GenAI can help iron out some of these disruptions, and in what way?
I definitely do think so. One is, of course, like I was saying, the ability to ask natural language questions to where we are in the supply chain. So first, getting the visibility through the whole control towers that we've been dealing with for years now, but ability to interact and trace it back to the source, right? So those are some of the initiatives that have been worked on from a supply chain visibility, supply chain traceability. Vivek spoke about sustainability, so creating the whole sustainable element into supply chain and validating against that. So AI and GenAI is being used in a lot of those areas too. So there's lots happening in the whole logistics and supply chain space as well. The whole optimization, which was done in traditional optimization techniques, we are leveraging things around GenAI here as well.
Great. And I want to get your take on this, Abhishek. Now, you have adopted GenAI. You've been one of the early implementers. Have you tried out any kind of automation tasks with GenAI in manufacturing? Has that been able to cut down any time for you, especially when it comes to the time saved during the manufacturing cycle?
Yeah, so it has saved a lot of effort of people calling to service engineers, and for service center, they are calling to the tech lead to tell, like for the most of the help which is happening right now is in agri business or tractor business. Normally at the rural level, the people don't know the other languages, multilingual.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have created our own GenAI base, which is integrated with their portal where they log their complaint. So when they log their complaint, it tells what is happening. If there is a black smoke, have you opened this, with images and everything. Now those calls have reduced by 90%. So at the time of this, the technician gets only the filtered calls to him. Most of them are getting solved by the knowledge base. And similar things happening at my ITSM, my ops window, where they have some problem and they, based on their knowledge base, they're able to handle that. Oracle was having that problem and what come out. The best part of these models are that it bring the not only your data related expertise, but it brings expertise from outside also. For example, if I'm looking after my Oracle database and some problem is coming, it will bring from internet side also that what command you have to put to get this data. And those collaboration is there. So some part of your data, so as a user, the user is doesn't want to, he doesn't get held up with some other information is required. Everything is available on a platter.
Right.
So it gives a more fast turnaround time, and the support people can help better in those cases. So knowledge base and summarizations, and these are doing great work. A lot of effort are saving, a lot of manpower related efficiency is coming out of this. And what customer side also, we have launched that 400 our XUV700 vehicle is full loaded with features. So so for a person to understand every feature, to go into the book and find out is difficult. So we can go and find out that this sign is there, that sign is there, what can it mean? How do I activate my ADAS? How do I do this? And the way it is interacting with the customer is delighted.
Right. Understood. All right. So that was some very subtle marketing of the XUV700. We're looking forward to the new Gen XUV as well. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. Now, we also have a principal architect who has been working with the manufacturing and automotive sector here. And Vivek, I would want to hear your inputs as well. If you've been, keeping track of the conversation, a rapid fire round with you as well. What are you most excited about when it comes to GenAI implementation in manufacturing? Let's start with that.
Look, honestly, I think that just to add to what Abhishek and Rajesh said, just the discovery of use cases, and it goes back to the foundation. Yes, you need to have the platform, you need to have the data in place. But honestly, when I play with GenAI to just see the possibilities, the potential of use cases always surprise me. So we said, we're like, oh wow, GenAI can also do this, right? It could be, and give an example. I was essentially trying to recreate automotive car designs, right? So I said, hey, look, I want to create sketches of car designs. I took a bunch of stuff from the internet. I said, I want the similar language to be followed. I want certain color palettes to be followed, so on and so forth. And I was able to take GenAI, extract features from actual picture, take that as prompts to the Imagine model to create a car sketch, right? And I never thought that could be possible, right? It just happened. Similarly, I essentially wanted to see what generative AI can do in the space of software-defined vehicles, right? Since we are talking about automotives. And I said that one of the most important regulations in software cybersecurity is ULWP 29, which is essentially cybersecurity regulations of vehicle software. And I gave a parcel of ECU code which was written in C, and I said, tell me which parts of the code violate this regulation. And generative AI is break down the entire code and saying, hey, this is what these are parts. So honestly, I think we're limited by generative AI with our ideas because we're still to comprehend a tool that has world knowledge about everything, at least is a dictionary or data source of world knowledge. And the limitation in this case is only what we are limited by our thinking, right? So honestly, in addition to the foundation, if you can plug that in, experiment, be pleasantly surprised as to what all you can do with this use case with the technology.
All right, that code analysis part was really interesting. But again, I don't want to be the guy pointing out the cloud in the silver lining, but then what's something that you would advise manufacturers to be wary about? What are you a little cautious about?
What I am a little cautious about is unrealistic expectations, and that's not only generative AI, but it's AI at large. A lot of people, you have a conversation, they're like, oh, okay, this has to be better than 99.99% accuracy, if you will. Look, the fact is your current process isn't there yet, right?
Right.
Your current processes and your current intelligence is there yet. So I think just being, as long as you're able to clear a benchmark that is much better than where you are, that is good enough, right? If that is a baseline and you use that as a baseline to clear, you're always going to be in good stead. So having logical, rational expectations of what GenAI can do is probably the biggest thing that I would be asked the manufacturers to be cautious about.
All right, fair enough. All right, I think that brings us to the end of this session. We had a great discussion today, both from a service provider point of view as well as one of the early implementers in the manufacturing space. So thank you so much for your inputs out there, Abhishek. They were really great. And Vivek and Rajesh for sharing that top view with us. If there are any concluding remarks that you would want to share with the audience, now's the time.
No, I think it's been a great conversation and great to hear from Abhishek and Vivek as well. And I think that's it. Yeah, good to be here.
All right, folks. Thanks again. Thanks for your time. Thanks for joining us for this conversation. And I hope you guys have a great day ahead.
Thanks, Shamik. Thanks, Abhishek. Thanks, Vivek.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks, Abhishek.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Krish. Bye-bye.